What's happening out there in Furlough Town, everybody? Well, if you have been adversely affected by the government shutdown that just started today, October 1st, I do apologize for your personal loss. But for me, it's the most wonderful time of the year. And I have to say that the reasons behind it, this government shutdown, if you can believe either side. I, of course, 1000% don't believe anything the Democrats are saying. And I fully believe that this shutdown does, in fact, have quite a bit to do with the runaway spending from the Democrat side of things, with insistence on subsidies and health cares for people like illegal immigrants. And why do I believe this? Well, because I live in California. Because I've firsthand seen what Democrats do when these situations arise, especially when you have a situation where you actually are in a hell of a lot of debt. When your state, for example, California, is $5 billion in debt, and yet you are still taking massive amounts of the budget and putting it into spending on healthcare, college education, cell phones, you name it, you got it, for illegal immigrants, for the homeless population. And in the meanwhile, you're just bilking over the actual taxpayers. Well, look to what's happening now with our government shutdown. Well warranted. The question, beyond the simple question of whether or not you are a member of the Lions of Liberty Poliprix, that's the new name for our Patreon, by the way. Instead of the Pride, we're changing it to the Poliprix Club because of our show, Politics. And we figured, well, Poliprix is more fun, funnier, and less associative than quote unquote Pride is. So, are you a member of the Poliprix? You should get on there. Patreon.com/Lions of Liberty or lionsofliberty.locals.com. Anyway, so the question is here whether or not this government shutdown is going to result in a whole lot of nonsense and nothingness, which is usually what happens. Every time we have a government shutdown, or at least every time we've had one, especially under the Democrats. And of course, the people in power always blame the other side for the shutdown. Meanwhile, the rest of us are just like, bring on the shutdown. I had just shared actually on the Libertarian National Party's account, the hand-wringing going on in a CNBC article where these people are going, oh my God, the stock market is down because people are unsure whether or not the economic ramifications of a shutdown are going to have wreak havoc on the marketplace. In the meantime, you look to Spain when the government shut down for like 18 months, and well, not 18 months, maybe not that long, but the government shuts down for many, many months, and the economy's booming. Job growth is up. The stock market's up. The economy's up 18%. I'm not too worried about things. I'm not too concerned if the national parks, which I think should be privatized anyway, if the national parks happen to have times where you're not allowed to go camping anymore because they don't have rangers. I would argue, well, people can fucking go in there if they want because the government doesn't have a right to access that land and have a control over every piece of land anyway, just de facto over the course of the nation here. So, sorry, I don't really give a fuck. The question beyond that, though, beyond the little things that might be problematic, is whether or not Donald Trump will, in fact, be able to use this as a purge of federal agencies, of employees that he doesn't want around, of bureaucratic waste that he doesn't want around, which was, of course, part of the problem with Doge, part of the problem, I think, with what the fallout between Donald Trump and Elon Musk was about, right, was because you have these measures they were trying to take to really reduce the size and scope of the federal government, reduce the bureaucracy, reduce the spending. But they didn't have the balls to actually go through with them. None of these cuts were made permanent. They didn't have any special sessions to get rid of them. And this really angered Elon Musk, right? It was a betrayal in his eyes. Now, maybe before this shutdown, it comes as a coincidence or not that Donald Trump and Elon Musk seem to have made up. They met at the Charlie Kirk Memorial Service. They were together. Elon Musk says, this is still my president. So maybe Elon is back in Donald Trump's ear saying, this is your opportunity. You've got the government shutdown. Now's the time when you can eradicate some of this chaff from the wheat, if we're considering government wheat. Government provides nothing, not even subsistence. So I don't even think that there's subsistence. So to even call the government the wheat, because at least wheat is useful. Wheat you could create something out of, like fucking bread. I digress. It remains to be seen what actually comes of this. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because really we don't know. We have to wait and see. I'm not going to project and say that this is going to happen or that, or wonderful things are forthcoming, because frankly, I've been let down by the Donald Trump administration in the past. I don't have a lot of faith in these things coming to fruition, but I'm always willing to be surprised. And I'm always willing to have an open mind and see what will happen. Similar to the tariffs. I thought doom and gloom, as did everybody. And so far, it hasn't been. And there are obviously measures behind that insofar as what the tariffs are trying to do to even the playing field, what they're trying to do as far as taking down some of the institutions that have been put into place here, like the European Union. So again, I will take a wait and see approach, but it certainly is entertaining. I'll tell you that. And I'm here with all the popcorn. Okay, so speaking of entertaining and entertainment, the big thing I actually wanted to talk about today is that Electronic Arts, which is one of the largest publishers of video games in the world, definitely in the United States, one of the top publishers, they make games like Soccer FC and Battlefield and, any number of other games. Growing up, Electronic Arts was ever present in my life, and they are prolific in how many different games across every genre they put out. Multi-billion-dollar company. So to that extent, Electronic Arts was a, whatever you want to call it, a quadruple A best bet blue chip stock company. They could do no wrong. They had a license to print money, especially as we as a culture adopted video games as a major component of entertainment, right? Mostly now, this is predominantly men, right? And predominantly straight men. Why? Because most men are straight and men make up almost half of the population. And women tend to write this up to culture, if they're nurture or nature. I will say it's predominantly nature. Most women do not have that big of an affinity for games, and especially shoot 'em up games. Maybe it's because of the way in which men, look to problem solve, interact, and they were programmed more to be, battle mode and achievement mode and this and that. Maybe it's because women are more social creatures. They prefer to talk rather than get involved in the game. I don't know. But point being, your audience was predominantly men and straight men. So this blue chip company, along with almost every other company in the industry that were these, AAA gaming studios, BioWare was part of EA that made the Dragon Ball games, and that one I talked about, but we'll come back to it. Sony, and all their creations. Bungie is another company that now is basically bankrupt. All of these companies that had licenses to print money went down the pure and simple path of go woke, go broke. And this was evident throughout all of these different games that were released over the past 3 to 5 years. And specifically, as I mentioned, Dragon Veil or Dragon Age Veilguard is one of them, right? So, I love it. I got to share Sean's comment here. The gay characters are popular in Madden among Cowboys fans. Thank you. I agree. I agree. Go Eagles. So an example, I'll give you 2 examples, and apologies if you're a longtime watcher of the show, you're going to know these, but they really are prescient in this conversation. These gaming studios, because they kept promoting people and allowing activists to not only get in their ear, but also made them prominent members of their development teams. Almost across all of these AAA gaming studios, it is shocking to see how many of the lead developers that are they're either developers, lead story writers, lead, whatever you want to call it, the leads that are deciding which way these games go, what the narrative of the game is, what the characters do and say, what the plot lines are. These were all, without fail, and it is, I mean, when I say shocking, I mean shocking, LGBTQ and predominantly trans. Almost all of them across the board. And these are for games that are $400, $500 million games and up. So one example is Concord. This game came out. It was so widely hated. And all the characters, you'll not be surprised to hear, were super quote unquote diverse, super quote unquote body positive, AKA obnoxious, chud models, right? The one big fat lady, and then you had a black skinny trans person as a every character was like this, intentional, in your face, non-associative to a straight male to be forced to play these characters. You go, what the fuck is this? I can't even customize these characters to make them look like me. That game was literally $400 million, to create, was on the market for 2 weeks. Gone. Completely gone. Eradicated. Sony decided it's not worth supporting it. No one plays it. Everyone hates it. Another example, Dragon Age, the Veilguard. Now, much like every corporate media, you've got your corporate press that cover video games with exceptions. Now there's YouTube channels that have risen up, kind of like Critical Drinker and Demion's another one that review these games. So they released Dragon Age, which was a iconic game. Again, a license to print money. They release it, and instead of having this wide open world where you could choose the morality of your characters, right? That was part of the attraction of Dragon Age. You could go and be the most evil motherfucker in the world, or you could be nice, right? Or you could be somewhere in between. Not in the new game. In the new game, your morality was decided for you, and it was a morality in which you had to fully accept a trans lifestyle, because one of the absolute major players in the game, you could not opt to not play this person. They're in there, and they had an entire scene in the game in which you are forced to go along because you misgender this person, which happens to be some sort of, female/male orc thing. You have to have a 15-minute scene where she berates you for misgendering her. They put this in a major game. Guess what happened to that game, and guess what the sales were? Cratered, goodbye, destroyed. Massive loss for the company, massive layoffs. This is happening across every major gaming studio. So what ends up happening when you go woke and go broke? Well, now, because you're a major studio, you're in a position of weakness. You now have shareholders. And this was a publicly traded company, Electronic Arts. Well, now, because the share price is tanking, because the activists are bitching at you, because they don't want to deal with the headache of having to appease everybody, and they've already fucked their company. They fucked their brand. Every game they roll out now, people look to with a skeptical eye because of the shit that they've done. And there's other companies involved. There's one called Sweet Baby Inc., which was a LGBTQ black, consulting company that is now renowned for destroying games. And there's actually a tracker, and you can see which games they worked on specifically so people could avoid to buy them. So you have a position of weakness you've created for yourself. In comes Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, which is hugely invested in entertainment. Let's not forget the Live Golf Tour is Saudi investment. And this is all through, actually, it's not, when I say Saudi Arabia, I don't mean individual people in Saudi Arabia. I don't mean just the prince. I'm talking about the corporate level, or actually the federal level fund. It's called the PIF. And this is the Public Investment Fund, which is the formal investment government arm for Saudi Arabia, which used to be doing a lot of investment in, different things like infrastructure projects. And I'm sure that's part of it, right? They just made a deal with Donald Trump for infrastructure. But this is now going into entertainment. And you ask yourself, why? Well, because culture is, in fact, impacted massively by entertainment. If done subtly, if done properly. I mean, for decades, people, you didn't realize the emphasis and influence that the three-letter agencies, the deep state, had on what you watched, what you imbibed from your entertainment providers, okay? When you talk about films, you have to think about how many, why does my fucking internet do this? Drive me insane, sorry. When you talk about films, you have no idea how much input the CIA has in that. The military has in that. The federal government has in that. When it comes to influence on narratives that go into these films. Same thing with television. The amount of influence they have on the narratives that go into this. So why do you think there's so many fucking shows made about CIA agents and FBI agents and police officers and all this other crap? There's a very good reason for it. Trust me. The Saudis are looking at this. They're going, well, shit. Why don't we get into this? If we get into the major sports events with Live Golf, then people are exposed to us, and we can kind of put in our messaging here. We can, and again, it's not for Live Golf, it's a pure money losing investment. That's how important it is for them to get into the culture and impact the sporting world here. So they get Live Golf. Now they're buying EA, and you looked at it and you go, okay, well, this is a good thing because at least these woke companies are getting slapped down, right? They're taking it up the ass, which makes me happy because they brought it on themselves. Like you're reaping what you have sowed, which is forcing garbage down people's throats because of your activist mentality, putting people in power who do not deserve to be there, who shouldn't be there, and who should not be, trusted with a major brand when they're just using it as a pet project to push their own viewpoint and lifestyle on people who have no interest into it. And it's not, as I said, it's not associative to anybody. Nobody wants to seek out and play this character because it has nothing to do with them. It's non-relatable. So it's great to see EA humbled and crushed and bought out by Saudi Arabia. And by the way, it's not just Saudi Arabia, because interestingly enough, and this is really going to piss off the libs, Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law, is also part of this deal. Now, yes, it raises a bit of questions and concerns with the close relationship between Donald Trump and Saudi Arabia from a business perspective, because not only does Live Golf have an appeal for Donald Trump because of the use of his golf courses, to which he's getting paid quite a bit of money, right? So there is a conflict of interest there. But now you've got your son-in-law also getting in on the action here as part of this deal, because he's a part of, I think it's called Affinity Partners. And they're a major investor into this buyout. Silver Lake and Affinity Partners. Affinity Partners is founded by Jared Kushner. So Kushner and Ivanka Trump are in a position to make billions because they're scooping up EA, which still has these AAA gaming titles that are very famous, that are very well known. As I said, Battlefield, Sports FC, whatever it is. I think EA makes also, I don't think it's Madden. Maybe it is Madden, but neither Madden or a Madden clone that's very popular. So he's scooping up an undervalued asset that these people have created, the undervaluing, because of their own ineptitude, for $55 billion. But if you turn the ship around, people are going to eagerly jump back on these titles. They will not wait to spend their money knowing that the wokesters have been outed. And by the way, it is hilarious. It is hilarious that all of these trans activists that took over gaming, all the LGBTQIA++ people that took over gaming, that worked for these companies, what an ironic twist that Saudi Arabia, which, by the way, does not have gay rights as a legal activity, nor gay relationships, nor gay sex. It's illegal in Saudi Arabia, which I don't think is right, by the way. But just to point it out, the fucking irony of these people putting their dick in the dirt, destroying their own companies with their activism to be bought out by a country that does not allow people to be gay. I mean, you can't write something funnier than that. Whether you agree with it or disagree with it, you can't deny. It's hilarious that it happened. So they're freaking out because Saudi Arabia, and by the way, I don't think this will happen, but I think these people will quit on their own. Saudi Arabia very well might look at these companies that EA owns and go, all right, we're firing all these fucking, gay people and trans people. And frankly, they have cause, because they can point to the utter failures of the games that all these people led the development on and their underperformance in the marketplace. And they could go, look, we have all the reason in the world. It's not just because we don't like gay people. It's because you guys suck at your jobs and you've ruined these franchises. So they 100% can just pull out the scythe and can chop that wheat down. So all these trans developers are right to be freaking out. You are going to lose your jobs, and you should. Maybe not for the reason the Saudis are going to fire you, but you fucking should be scared, and you should be fired. Now, the later question about this is whether or not this is actually a good thing in the long run. In the short run, yeah, it's a great thing, right? We're kicking out the wokesters. You're taking back valuable properties that do employ, tens of thousands of American workers. That's great. You're getting rid of a blight on a major aspect of culture, which is the blight that was activist control of games. Great. You're eradicating that. Fucking fantastic. But on the flip side of that, right, what do we trust the Saudis to do? This is the same country, just to point out, of course, that coordinated the 9/11 attacks, or at least looked the other way, but we know there's funding pathways there. This is a fundamental religious nation, right? Do we really trust that they're not going to have any say and any input in how these games were allowed? A lot of these games had as narrative features, especially the Battlefield games. Okay, maybe you're fighting in Afghanistan, or maybe you're fighting in Yemen, or maybe you're fighting. Are they going to eliminate all criticism or critique of Islam? Are you going to allowed to fight against jihadis, or will the jihadis be the good guys in the game now? That's my concern. When you have a government which is not a friendly government to us, I don't care what deals we make. I don't care how many photo ops around the fucking glowing orb of Bahubajah you take. This is a government that is not friendly to the United States. They have their self-interest at heart. They do not share our values. They do not share our morals. Controlling a major publisher of video games that impacts millions of young people, and adults, but it's the young people that I'm really more worried about. That's a big concern. I mean, that is a major concern to me. So I guess we shall wait and see. But on the other side, you figure, okay, if they push too hard with this crap, then they've just made themselves a $55 billion investment, as undervalued as it might be, that they might just drive further into the ground, because people are simply not going to sit around and allow cultural, overtake to happen on the other side of the coin, rather than it be LGBTQTAII. Instead, they're pushing jihadist messaging. I think people are going to wake up to that too and go, what, fuck off. Enjoy making your video games for the broader Middle East, and we're fine right over here buying our indie video games that are coming out that just are good old-fashioned fun. All right. So there's that. Last thing I want to talk about today is that the co-founder of Wikipedia, Larry Sanger, who's a developer, was just on with Tucker Carlson. Now, nothing that Larry Sanger said in his Tucker Carlson interview was a surprise to me. Basically, this is that Wikipedia is a left-wing activist organization, that there are anonymous people that decide and edit everything on there, and that they all have a very specific agenda, that there are blacklists where they do not allow research or resources to be listed, because the way Wikipedia works, by the way, and as somebody, again, with my deep PR background, let me tell you, getting something listed on Wikipedia is a massive pain in the ass. And they make it a ridiculous pain in the ass. To get something on there, they tell you have to jump through 85 hoops. When you jump through those hoops, they then tell you that the hoops aren't good enough, and that there's much smaller hoops for you to jump through. You jump through those hoops, and they tell you, well, no, we want these different hoops for you to jump through. On and on and on. These people are fucking assholes. They take actual pleasure. I'm telling you this for a fact. They take pleasure in making you dance like a monkey for them, because it's these anonymous, we just do it for the love of the game accounts. What that makes is people who are narcissistic shitheads. And that's what Wikipedia is, in fact, manned by. So they have these corporate blacklists where they make you have third-party resources. That's what you have to do. You're not allowed to have first-person articles written on there. It has to be a resource piece which links to other things like a footnote. So you put in all your footnotes, but you can't have any footnotes in there that aren't from publications that are very left-leaning, that they personally find valuable. Like they don't really appreciate trade journals, which is fucking retarded, right? If there's anything that should be valuable as a bookmark to your validity, it's a trade publication. Yet these fucking shitheads want you to get the New York Times to write about you. And if you have Fox News cover you for an article, they don't count it. So you know about the blacklists. You know about this anonymous user 62 group that have all the power, right? That nobody knows who they are. So there's no accountability. You can't sue them. You know that they go in, edit and alter, conservative viewpoints, conservative personalities, to paint them in pure slander, if we're being perfectly frank, that nobody can go in and fact check, because again, the entire leadership is led by these left wingers. And as soon as you try to fix something, they'll change it right back. It's a complete abomination. It goes against everything it should have been and stood for initially. So people are coming around and realizing this. Like I, for one, never use Wikipedia for anything anymore. But people are realizing what Wikipedia is and how it has to be fought against, to the point where Elon Musk is now announcing a Grokpedia to counter Wikipedia. Now, can we trust Elon Musk's, because I'm sure it'll have more of his viewpoints in there? Well, I would say more than Wikipedia, because at least Musk might put in some sort of mandatory, two sides of the coin when it comes to drawing resources, and deny at least activism within the platform. And the biggest concern now for me, too, is that when you've got these chat bots that everyone's using for research, that turn to Wikipedia. Well, your Grok, even your Chat GPT, your, whatever you name it, Google Gemini, all of these bots that are searching for research to tell you an answer to your question are going to Wikipedia. So what you're getting back, this is why when you get back shit that's just flat out wrong, a lot of that time you're going to get that from Wikipedia because it's sourcing activist information that is completely inaccurate from Wikipedia. And they all do it. I mean, Wikipedia honestly should be blacklisted from any of these chat services because it is so untrustworthy. I mean, there's certain things, basic historical profiles, you could find pretty good information on Wikipedia, right? So that's fine. But when it comes to anything deeper than that, you are being misled. So it's going to be fascinating to see if Elon Musk can, in fact, turn around this Grokopedia, how long it'll take. Now, the good news is, I guess you could use ChatGPT or Grok to write the code, which brings its own questions in mind for, by the way, security purposes, but also authenticity and accuracy in coding, because all of these programs now can write you an entire program in the blink of an eye. But the problem is sometimes they pull code because it's publicly sourced code where they're pulling it from that is security breach worthy, that is inaccurate, that has basic core structural issues. I'm reading all these people that are in development talking about how they used X, Y, or Z to create something, to create blocks of code. And then they go in later and they go, oh, fuck, I have to redo this entire project because this piece of code was ripped out of somewhere else and it's not good code. So when are we going to get a Grokopedia? Will it be worthwhile? Will it be more, will it fall down the same slanderous hole of activism? Who gets to contribute to it? These are all questions I have. And it's also one of those things where I go, Elon, you might be biting off a little bit more than you can chew here. I know you're the world, one of the richest men in the world, but maintain some focus. I have stock on Tesla, buddy. Let's keep things a little bit more focused in the moment. Let's just let people know that Wikipedia cannot be trusted. On that same road of thought, the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, which I love this broad term for an organization, the Anti-Defamation League. You'd think they'd be against defamation of all people, but no, it's just for Jews. That's what it was created for, just to make sure that you couldn't defame the Jews. They are rightfully being exposed as what they basically are, which is their own version of a hate group. Why do I say this? Well, because the Anti-Defamation League, as one of the core components, along with AIPAC, in going after, politicizing, and demonizing anybody that doesn't go along with the wishes and wants of Israel, right? So it's a political organization, pure and simple. It has nothing to do with basic rights or basic defense of the Jewish people. No, this is a tool of Israel. And it is an attack tool of Israel. But beyond that, we found out recently that they had labeled Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA as a hate group. So you've got an Anti-Defamation League warrantlessly and unsubstantiatedly, because as you've seen by numerous videos, conversations, ample video and audio evidence of Charlie Kirk, he was not an anti-Semite. In fact, he had gone out of his way to defend Israel, I think, for far too long. And of course, there's conspiracy theories about whether or not Israel is the organization that pulled the trigger, put Tyler Robinson up to it. I personally don't buy those theories, but that's how much in the tank for Israel he was up until a certain point. Of course, much like the rest of America, that certain point came along with what's happening in Gaza, the ongoing, just horrific actions of Israel in Gaza. So they labeled Turning Point USA with no evidence a hate group. So the Anti-Defamation League has now defamed a major organization simply because it doesn't go along with the broader political preferences of their Jewish base. I mean, that's some fucked up shit right there. But it goes to show you exactly what their true colors are. And now they're being, of course, attacked, and I couldn't be happier about it. Couldn't be happier about it. Because much like the ACLU, which may have started off in a good place, but then became completely corrupt. The ACLU is one of the most demonically disturbed organizations, a complete joke, a mirror world, a Star Trek mirror world where Spock comes out with a fucking goatee is what every person at the ACLU is at this point in time. Similarly, the Southern Poverty Law Center. Now, I don't know what the origins of the SPLC were, but that's another hate group. They are a hate group masquerading as a group that's out for peace and love and just to keep the world a better place. What they are is an attack dog arm for the Democrats, for the whatever you want to call it, the leftist, activist, Marxist wing of the party. That, even a very good friend of mine named Michael Bolden at the 10th Amendment Center, which is a fantastic organization that, fights for many of the things that Democrats would want, helping to shut down government organizations that are crossing the line and being abusive, giving people more choice, fighting for individual rights, because the 10th Amendment is that, anything that's not specifically outlined here is a right of the states, not the federal government. It gets trampled on all the time. That's the reason for the 10th Amendment Center. Michael Bolden, one of the sweetest men I've ever met in my life, has been listed as a hate monger by the Southern Poverty Law Center. These groups, as always, just like when Democrats attack people for being fascist, when we know where the fascism in our country and in all these people lie, which is with the Democrat Party specifically, in censorship, in removal of guns, in making the government the primary means of production, all these are fascist elements, and marching us there as fast as they can. All of these groups that put themselves out there as defenders of liberty or free speech or free love are always the opposite of what they claim. The ADL has proven itself to be so. Wikipedia, the world's most open internet. Oh, it's open and free, truth for all. Again, run by activist leftist psychopaths. The ACLU, overtaken by leftist activist psychopaths. All of these things are coming and being laid out for everyone to see. And it is a fantastic fucking thing. I mean, the speed in which people are waking up, and I don't know if this is distinctly, again, the death of Charlie Kirk, as horrific as it was, I said this at the time, may in fact be such an unbelievable point in the evolution and the direction of our country, a turning point. I don't think it can be overstated, because we're continuing to see institutions be blown up and the fallout from this. And the gaming industry is the one. EA, would EA be bought out by Saudi Arabia right now if so many of the developers weren't exposed and fired as hate-filled monsters celebrating the death of a man shot in the neck in public for political views? I don't know. Maybe not. So, interesting times. All right, guys. Thank you to everybody that is watching along. Again, you can join us at our Patreon or our locals. Get on in there for all of our bonus content. And otherwise, make sure to watch and listen to our network. Subscribe. We've got 5 shows, 4 every week, and then politics, which is every other week. And of course, you can have me, Brian Nichols, John Odermatt, Lou Perez, and some bonus content people like Rico, my good friend Rico. So, guys, thank you for watching. I will talk to you later. And don't forget, keep those electric eyes on me, babe. And keep that ray gun to my head.